Every history book says the same thing. Flamethrowers were banned after World War II, and almost every history book is wrong. No international treaty ever made them illegal. No law ever said soldiers couldn't carry one. So why did they disappear? Why did the most effective close-quarters weapon of the Pacific War simply vanish from every army on Earth? Not because of law, but because of something far stranger. And at the end of this video, I'll show you a single photograph that killed the flamethrower. Not in battle, not in a courtroom, but in the court of public opinion. Welcome to WW2 Objects. Every object tells a story. To understand what made the M2 flamethrower so vital and why its disappearance is so strange, you have to understand one specific problem that nearly stopped the US Marine Corps cold in 1943. The Japanese had built something almost impossible to fight: concrete pillboxes, underground tunnel networks, cave positions carved directly into volcanic rock. Aerial bombardment couldn't reach them. Tank shells couldn't penetrate at the right angle, and every time Marines advanced across open ground, those hidden positions opened fire and cut them down. Standard weapons couldn't solve a problem you couldn't see. The M2 flamethrower, introduced in 1943 as a successor to the earlier M1, solved it. You strapped 30 kilograms of fuel and compressed nitrogen onto your back. You crawl within 20 meters of a position. You pull the trigger. The weapon fires a mix of diesel fuel and high-octane aviation gasoline at half a gallon per second. And in 8 seconds, everything inside that concrete bunker is gone. Think of it like a master key. When ordinary weapons hit the outside of a fortified bunker, they bounce off. The flamethrower didn't fight the bunker. It slipped through the ventilation, through the firing slit, through any opening at all. And you couldn't build a wall that stopped it. By 1944, a standard US Marine division carried up to 243 of these weapons. Nearly 25,000 M2s were produced in total. But here's what most people don't realize. The men who carried them were the most targeted soldiers on the battlefield. Here's why that targeting mattered so much. A flamethrower operator wore his fuel supply on his back: 4 gallons of gasoline and 2 gallons of pressurized nitrogen, and all in metal cylinders, in clear view of every enemy sniper on the island. The moment you stood up with that rig, you became the priority target. Every Japanese defender knew what those tanks meant. Think of the difference between a soldier carrying a rifle and a soldier carrying a torch toward a building. One is a threat from range, the other signals what's about to happen, and the building's defenders know their only option is to stop that torch before it arrives. Now you might be thinking, why not just have tanks handle this? Actually, tanks couldn't reach where the fighting happened. The tunnels and caves of islands like Iwo Jima required a human being who could crawl, maneuver, and adapt. Corporal Hershel Williams of the 1st Battalion, 21st Marines, 3rd Marine Division, demonstrated exactly this on February 23, 1945. In his own words, recorded by the National World War II Museum, "I strapped a flamethrower on my back and started crawling toward the pillboxes. I can remember bullets ricocheting off my air tank. Williams crawled within 20 to 25 yards of one position and, as Stars and Stripes reported, rolled a big ball of flame at the enemy gunner. At another pillbox, he noticed a wisp of smoke from a ventilation hole, inserted the nozzle, and fired. He went back to his lines 5 times over 4 hours to reload and returned each time. He received the Medal of Honor for that afternoon. Corporal Raymond Hart, 28th Regiment, summed it up plainly. It was the flamethrowers got it done. And that brings us to the real question this video is built around. Remember what I said at the start? That every history book calls this weapon banned? Here's where it gets genuinely surprising. The 1949 Geneva Conventions never mention flamethrowers. At the 1980 Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, CCW Protocol III, concluded October 10, 1980, and entering into force December 2, 1983, does restrict incendiary weapons, but not absolutely. It prohibits targeting civilian populations with them. It restricts their air delivery near civilian concentrations. It does not ban the weapon from existing. It does not ban their use against military targets. The Lieber Institute at West Point confirms it directly. The law is clear that incendiary weapons are permissible in armed conflict, subject to certain restrictions. So what actually happened in 1978, 5 years before Protocol III even took effect? The Department of Defense unilaterally retired the flamethrower, not because a treaty required it, not because it stopped working, because the DoD decided the weapon was, in their own words, inhumane and of little combat value. A strategic choice is a political choice. Here's the open loop I planted at the start. And this is the part most historians get wrong. The legal case for banning flamethrowers never succeeded. But one image did what Geneva couldn't. In 1972, a photographer captured a 9-year-old girl, Phan Thi Kim Phuc, running from a napalm strike in Vietnam. The photograph won the Pulitzer Prize. It ran on front pages around the world, and it collapsed public support for every incendiary weapon, not just napalm. The flamethrower, though tactically separate, was swept up in the same wave of revulsion. Retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Charles Crone, a former senior defense official, described the 1978 decision plainly. Setting people on fire seemed unnecessarily cruel. It was an emotional reaction rather than practical. The most effective close-quarters weapon of the Pacific War wasn't defeated by a better design. It wasn't outlawed by a courtroom. It was retired by a photograph. So when you see an M2 flamethrower in a museum or a World War II film, you'll know it's not just a relic of extreme warfare. It's a precision instrument that unlocked fortifications no other weapon could reach. It's the weight on a Marine's back while bullets ricocheted off his fuel tanks. And it's proof that in the modern world, public perception can retire a weapon faster than any treaty ever written. Thank you for watching WW2 Objects. If you have suggestions, from sidearms to survival gear to the strange engineering of tank tracks, drop them in the comments and we'll give you a shout out. Like, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story from the battlefield.